Kamusta ka mo? Hi, it's Viktoria Vox. Yes, new hair baby. Okay. Now, don't you just hate it when people interrupt you, especially when you're in the middle of saying an important point? Ang kabarkada mo na ba nga tanan nga sabat, dumay template siya. Ang kahibigan na gani, kaya nag-separate imo nga ginikanan, tapos sabtun ka pa nga, ako gani, halin sa broken family. Wala lang na You'll get over it. Wala na siya gani, namate, gimbastos ka pa. We often hear that relationships and conversations are a two-way street. Two-way as in, one talks, the other listens. One gives, the other receives. Doesn't it sound so simple? But then, why is it all in theory? Amo na gid na kabudlay i-apply sa pangabuhi? Literally, when someone is talking, keep quiet and listen. Listen. You know, it's not that difficult. It's basic human decency. Kung tapos na siya, go. Turn mo na. Hapos lang, di ba lang? Do pang grade 1, GMRC lang na bala. Pero nga man damo, gyapon, hindi ka gets how. And the worst part, this behavior often comes from people close to us. Maybe because they assume that we're just going to tolerate it. But sometimes it's too much. Tama na. Mamati ka man, B? Let's just say that my conversations with my family are rarely healthy. We always end up wanting to scream at each other. Maybe because we all think differently and we like to push our opinions. Maybe rules were also factors when we were raised. Like suppressing our thoughts in the fear of being labeled as bastos by our elders. So ang ending, pagdako ta, pirmi gusto magunahan, maghambal, kag magsinggitan ay. Kung kami gani isang magulang ko mag-away, I try to uphold my end of the conversation by listening to his side. Pero syempre, granted, nga may chance man ko magsabat, di bala? When he's done, I'll ask if I can speak, and he almost always says no. So, I would listen more intently, kay base may importante pa siyang hambalon. If there's another chance, I would say, I understand, and please hear me out. Ang problema, ginasumbatan pa ko nga, nagambal ko nga tapos na ko. You can talk when I tell you to talk. Tingnan man do may power play yahaw. So again, I would stay calm and wait. But after how many attempts of politely squeezing myself in the conversation, kag wala pagid ko gyapon ginapasabat, dira na ko gapitik. I would shout. And of course, it would spark a fight because I was exhausted from being a human punching bag. Two-way street, di ba? Di ano na? Sino bala hindi matakaan sa amo ng kabatasan na ber? Again, I'm not saying that my reaction was good. Maybe I should have waited a little longer and asked more questions, but maybe so he should have too. Respeto lang man ginapangayo ko mo. A chance to be heard. Kung hindi niya kaya pag-ihatag, then what's the point of initiating a healthy discussion with someone? Listening to someone means paying attention and empathizing. Empathizing meaning understanding the context. See where they are coming from. Hindi nga makipag-istorya ka, pero may expected outcome ka na dayon. Listening with empathy is actually not that hard. But what becomes a challenge is learning to push aside your pride and ego. It's learning to open your mind and silence that voice that keeps saying, hindi sala siya maskin ano matabuin sakto kaya. When you come into a discussion, a conversation, or a dialogue, you have to be aware that there's more than one person to consider. Dialogue, di pala? Titani, nagmonolog ka na lang sa tubang sang espejo. But if you actually want to speak with someone, then know that their participation in that conversation is required. May kaistorya ka, di ba? Di kundi pa matian mo. Cutting off someone mid-sentence is rude. Not giving them a chance to talk at all is even worse. And we do this to people who we think are below us. Feeling mo, pwede mo bastuson, kay kaya mo. Because if you've had that ounce of respect for that person, you would not find it in you to blatantly cut them off. We think it's enough to just sit down and be quiet, but it isn't. There's a big difference between hearing and listening. When you hear someone, you literally just hear their voice. Amo niyang sulod sa isa ka dulunggan, guwa sa pihak. Think of all the times that you were so bored in class. You were just hearing your teacher, kay isa na siya ka oras gahambal. But did you listen? No. Because if you did, you would have been able to absorb it. But that's the thing. Listening is at a much higher level. You actually have to pay attention to what the person is saying, and that comes with context. Nga man naging amo niyang sitwasyon. Ano natabo? Nga man muna nabatyagan niya. Just like the law, there's a trial first. An exchange of evidence and testimonies. You have to ask questions. Know what happened before concluding a verdict. But if you enter a conversation with someone just to convict without hearing their side, where is justice? Ikaw na gani prosecutor, ikaw pa judge. Listening pushes you to ask necessary questions because when you listen, you're after solutions, not prosecutions. And the more you practice listening, you realize that the words being uttered are not the only things that matter, but also how it's being said. It's their gestures, it's their expressions, it's their pauses, and even the words that they use. But the most important part to observe is how they feel when telling you those things. Opening up is a moment of vulnerability. It takes courage. So when someone goes out of their way to tell you how they feel, hold that knee-jerk reaction and wait for your turn to speak. Make sure they feel acknowledged and respected. So when your sister tells you you hurt her feelings, instead of giving her 100 reasons to prove you're right and she's wrong, just listen to what she has to say. What triggered her to get hurt? How could that conflict be addressed? Keep in mind that the key to a healthy conversation is to find a solution for the issues at hand. Hindi ni siya oras para makapag-away, Because when people find it hard to listen with empathy, relationships get ruined. If you put someone in the corner and take their voice, the only thing they can do is scream. No one wins. Everyone loses. In turn, you lose your relationship. We all have an innate desire to be heard. And that's because listening is so powerful. It transcends through people. Empathetic listening is one of the ways to create a strong foundation for any kind of relationship. Because until you learn to listen, you'll keep missing out on the most important parts. And nobody wants to be around a selfish person who just wants to be the center of attention, the spotlight all the time. The type of person that never gives other people a chance to speak. And sure, it's not all conscious behavior. Sometimes it comes with culture. Especially diri sa Pilipinas na kung magsabat gani ang ilang mga bata, bastos na dayon. Hambalan ka pa nga, sabat-sabat ka pa ha? Tapos mas akigan ka pa. Let's get this clear. Louder does not mean correct. Older does not mean you are exempted from making mistakes and learning from them. So instead of teaching our kids not to answer back, let's teach them to wait for their turn to speak. Kisa sa pagpadako man mo, when a kid throws a tantrum and screams at other people, some parents would give in to get it over with. That makes these kids think that screaming is rewarded, and eventually they get what they want. So pagdako nila, they will likely grow up thinking that effective communication requires shouting. So yes, context matters, but we can't keep on blaming poor behavior on everyone but ourselves. If our parents have hurt us, yes, they scarred us. But what we choose to do now is a reflection of us. So act according to how you want your life to be better. You have a choice to outgrow and unlearn those bad habits. You have a choice to hone better behavior. So the question is, gusto mo hindi? Listening with empathy requires practice. Think about all the arguments you've been in. Notice how a lot of them were rooted from miscommunication. Looking back, it wasn't big of a problem after all. Tani na istoryahan na lang gali. But at the heart of the moment, some people choose pride. And when you do, nobody wins. You know, winning an argument isn't a win for everyone. Or for anyone. You lose respect in even a loved one. You taint relationships. And if winning an argument comes at the cost of losing everything else, is it really worth it? Ask yourself. Did being right make you happy? Did it make you a better man? Did it make you a better person? It's a no. for all of the above. When you listen to someone, you don't just hear the story. You don't just wait for the punchline either. You don't just say it's going to be okay when you haven't heard the whole story. Because listening is compassion. Listening is empathy. Listening is valuing relationships. Listening is being respectful. When you empathetically listen to someone, what you're actually saying is you are valued. You matter. What that silence actually says is you are heard. What the person across the table actually hears is I'm here for you. What it means is I'm also willing to fix it. Libre mamati, di ba? So hindi pag ipagkait. Because whatever it is, kaya na istoryahan But an actual dialogue requires at least two people who are willing to work through their differences. Two people who are willing to set their egos aside to listen with empathy. Even the people we love the most sometimes forget to listen to us, and sometimes kita man, nagkakasala man. So on days like those, listen. People often mirror our habits, so if you want people to listen to you with empathy, you have to practice what you preach. Train yourself to pay attention to what the other person is saying. Not only does it help you communicate better, but it also helps empower the receiving end. Remember that listening should be a form of emotional connection. So be more attentive to each word they say and choose the right words to reply. Excuse yourself. Oftentimes when we're not being heard, or being interrupted, or not given a chance to speak, we feel irritated and we tend to raise our voice. And of course, wala pa kaduan ang ginawa ka sang isa kag isa kung puno lang sang singgit. That being said, try to use lines like, "Excuse me, I have something to say. I'd like to add to that. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I am not done with what I was saying," when you feel like you're being disrespected. That way, the conversation is more civil and regulated. I know it's so much easier to lose your composure and resort to shouting when your presence is being downplayed or your ego might have been hit. But, try to be the person who shows what handling a mature conversation is like, but empathize with them too. Understand where they are coming from. Are they always like this towards you, or is this the first time? Are they under a lot of stress today? Did they just go through a tragedy? Expecting empathy means you should also be willing to give it. Not to say that these circumstances excuse bad behavior, but once in a while letting things slip won't hurt us. We all fall short sometimes. All of us. And a little more empathy won't hurt. Listen with empathy. Set boundaries, but also give chances to the people around you. Nobody will get it 100% of the time. Even the most well-mannered people fall short sometimes. So instead of striking at the sight of every mistake, practice empathy. Even the people we love the most will carry opposing views. Let's learn to respect that. Practice being in a healthy dialogue by learning to listen with empathy, regardless of your opposition, and make sure the person you're talking to gets to do the same. And if you feel overstepped in a conversation, then politely excuse yourself. And before shutting the door on anyone, remember that they're human who also forgets. Human beings make mistakes, and sometimes the world gets the worst of them. And on days like those, I hope you choose to empathize with the people you love. This is the 39th episode of this makeup therapy series, and if you like content such as this, please hit the like, the share, comment your thoughts down below, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye!